Hey, peace and blessings, everybody. It's your brother Asare back with another one. Appreciate all the support as always. I got to give a shout out to the True and Living, all my people out there checking, been checking this out, kind of following the material, kind of vibing with me. I appreciate y'all. Um, what we're gonna get into today, gonna get into a little bit of this TM. We're gonna get into something out of True Master Volume 2. This is True Master Volume 2, um, Self to Others. But it's a concept we're gonna get into out of True Master Volume 2. This is kind of, but this is not the origin of this. Where this teaching, remember, if you all been following the material and everything we've been laying down this whole time, um, True Master comes out of um, a epistemology, a divination system, however you want to call it, um, called the experiential, right? It's based on symbols, patterns, and principles. Operates something like a algorithm. Problems can be filtered through it, where you find solutions to problems and everything like that. I took a different approach. I took a craft and filtered a craft through it, or whatever case may be, and thus that's how when you pick this up, that's how you arrive at some of the ideas and concepts that you're going to find in there or what have you. So yeah, so with this concept in True Master Volume 2, what we've distilled this concept down to is what I call in the book the spirit of victory. You see what I'm saying? Not victory itself, like winning something or whatever, but the essence, the spirit of victory or whatever case may be, in that's mentioned in True Master Volume 2. All right. Now, where does that even come from? Before I even get into it or whatever, the spirit of victory or whatever, it comes out of, see, Tai Chi Classics. It comes out of something in Tai Chi Classics called correct touch. We just distill it down a little bit further in True Master and call it the spirit of victory. But we're going to get into both of those ideas. Um, if you like what you've been hearing, man, like and subscribe because we're gonna get into this. Um, all right, so this section it comes out of the Tai Chi Classics books. It's different iterations of that book that may have more or less material in it to alleviate me beating my head against the wall trying to find the exact quote I'm looking for. I'm going to just read it off the internet, but you can find it. This comes out of Tai Chi Classics. It's a thing in Tai Chi called correct touch. Okay, so Tai Chi comes from Wu Ji, or it says Tai Chi Grand Terminus comes from Wu Ji, formless void. All right. It's a similar thing that we were talking about in previous videos. If you go back into the video about the fragmentation of awareness and everything like that, we're talking about the Kabbalah tree of life and everything like that. And we're talking about Kether and what's above Kether, Ein Sof Or, and all this stuff like that, or whatever case may be. These would be the things above Kether. This is the same thing as the tree of life, the same thing as the circle of space, matter, and time. This is just the language that it's spoken about in Taoism and Taoist philosophy and things of that nature. So moving right along, Taiji, the grand terminus, comes from Wuji, formless void, and is the mother of yin and yang. Remember when we were talking about in the discourse on numbers, we went into the book by R.A. Schwaller de Lupis, A Study on Numbers, and he was breaking down how the one divides into the many, how the reason why it starts dividing is because it has two contradictory natures within itself or whatever, and it splits apart into male and female. We broke that down from the perspective of one dividing into two on into nine. You see what I'm saying? From the concept of numbers as principles. Now we're talking about it from the perspective of Wu Ji, Tai Ji, Yin, Yang. We're using that language, but as you can see, we're talking about the same thing. So let's keep going. Okay, Tai Chi separates in stillness, yin and yang unite and return to Wu Ji, right? Okay, it is not excessive or deficient. It follows a bending and adheres to an extension, right? When the opponent is hard and I am soft, it is called Zhao, yielding. Remember how we were talking about like the as you get into these arts and these styles and everything like that or whatever, when you have certain hand motions and things or whatever, they mean something, and it has a function, it performs, it's doing something energetically or whatever case may be. So when something hard comes at this, when my opponent is hard and I'm soft or whatever case may be, I'm yielding. That's a particular energy. That's a particular way of dissipating force or whatever case may be. So it has a function. It facilitates a pattern. So so you see how it bleeds into the other material and some of the stuff. When you get into uh TM Volume 2, you're gonna get a lot more of that language like that. So that's why it sounds like that. You see what I'm saying? And a lot of these videos, it's a blend between stuff that's specifically like coming out of the experiential, and it's stuff that's more leaning toward the martial art esque specification of true master. I often try to differentiate between the two. You see what I'm saying? So you kind of know why it sounds like that, but you have to understand the experiential before this even makes sense. So that's why I try to explain that a lot. Okay, so when the opponent is hard and I am soft, it is called Zhao, yielding. When I follow the opponent and he becomes backed up, it is called Nian, adhering. Uh, if the opponent's movement is quick, then quickly respond. If his movement is slow, then follow slowly. All there innumerable variations. The principles that pervade them remain the same. All right, now this is the punchline of reading all this. From familiarity with the correct touch, and this it describes it as touching hands with a Tai Chi master, but we're gonna kind of distill it down even further. From familiarity with correct touch, one gradually comprehends Jin, intrinsic strength. From the comprehension of Jin, one can attain wisdom. Without long practice, one cannot suddenly understand Tai Chi. Without effort, the Jing reaches the top of the head, and it goes on from there, whatever case may be. But I was reading that to kind of let you know like what it's talking about with correct touch. This is why in True Master we refer to that as what it feels like to do something correctly. When you're dealing with, you know, what they talking about in there, they talking about transference of energy from a master to a disciple type thing or whatever case may be. That's a little bit specific to the actual martial art itself, but it applies it applies the same way. When your teacher is teaching you how to do this stuff, he's teaching you how to do it in the correct way. The nuances that you can't get on the internet or in a book or anything like that, a person teaches it to you or whatever case may be. That's an aspect of what's referred to as correct touch. Now we're gonna go into True Master Volume 2, and we're going to kind of see how that's flavored in the book, how we use that in True Master, right? Okay, so this is volume 2. This is True Master volume 2. All right, and this is the section, page 135, uh, smaller section called Correct Touch, right? Piggybacking off of what we just talked about out of the Tai Chi Classics, right? So correct touch gives you the power of self-correction, right? Very important because you know how it feels to do something correctly. Remember in a previous video that we made, we were talking about the prize is not the priority, right? The development is the priority because the prize is not the priority because the prize can't give you this. This is what it feels like to do it correctly. And once you understand the basics of what it feels like to do something correctly, you can advance that. What do you do when there's two people who both know how to do it correctly or whatever case may be? The one who has the least amount of deficiencies is gonna win. You see what I'm saying? The least of the best of the bad will win. You see what I'm saying? So as they say. So because you know how it feels to do something correctly, are sensitive enough to know when you are not doing it that way and can correct yourself. So remember how we talked about the four phases of awareness? We talked about the layman, the philosopher, the scientist, and the artist. The layman has improper application and is unaware that they have improper application. No theory, no method. The philosopher is a person who has improper application, but they know they have improper application. They have a theory, but they have no method. Okay, the birth of a method is actually the scientist. So the scientist has proper application aware. So he knows the difference between proper and improper application, and he thus has developed some manner of method. So this is that realm. Again, we getting deeper into the realm of the scientist, okay? Because you know how it feels to do something correctly, are sensitive enough to know when you are not doing it that way and can correct yourself. Correct touch is the term used in the Tai Chi Classics as when a person has built the habit of consistently applying principles of structure, multiplicity, proper timing, etc. to his mental intent. The principle behind your intent, which is the only true principle at work. With this, you have built a relationship with the spirit of victory. This is true master language. So I apologize if it may deviate from the textbook language of the experiential. It kind of does a little bit, but at the same time you kind of see the overall um idea behind it. Um, Literally, the habit of winning or successful execution. Remember the wrestler Bret the Hitman Hart? They used to call him the excellence of execution. You see what I'm saying? Back in the day, some of y'all might be too young to remember that. Back in the day, um, literally, the habit of winning or successful execution. Spirits are patterns. You see what I'm saying? So when we say the spirit of victory, in the experiential language, spirits are patterns. See what I'm saying? So really I'm saying when I say the spirit of victory, I'm actually saying the pattern of victory or the pattern of proper execution is really what I'm saying when you kind of break the nuts and bolts down. But for the sake of sensationalism, you said we'll call it the spirit of victory or whatever. So you can got throw your V's up for victory or whatever case may be. So in the mind it resonates a certain kind of way that has a certain level of symbolism in it. But this is what I'm actually talking about. We're talking about it practically. It's not for sensationalism purposes. So it's practicing um, repetitions of doing something correctly. Is basically what I'm talking about. Okay, let's continue. And abundance, the spirit habit enables. So the spirit is likened unto a habit as well. See what I'm saying? Okay, the spirit habit enables one to manifest his desires at will. These principles can be applied to anything. All right. So the spirit or the habit that you're engendering or whatever enables you to perform at will. So the better that you get at it, the more you do it, and the more you do it correctly or whatever, the more easily you're able to perform it at will. You see what I'm saying? So you have a relationship so-called with the spirit of victory, as it were. Okay, strive to gain familiarity with correct touch, knowing what it feels like to do it right, proper alignment, right? Learn how it feels to do it correctly by doing it correctly within practice. Then take note of the feeling of doing it correctly and duplicate it in your body and mind. All right, so that's the section that I want to read out of TM. That's one of the sections, and it's another little section or whatever case may be. Um, but yeah, that's I put it to you like this: in Tai Chi Classics, um, that it's more specifically kind of talking about um, Tai Chi as an art or whatever case may be. But anybody who studies Kung Fu knows Kung Fu that's just hard work over time. If I'm a chef that's been doing it, if I'm a chef that's been cooking for 10 years, I'm doing Kung Fu. If I'm a whatever I'm doing, if I'm an architect, if I'm a doctor, whatever, that's that person's Kung Fu. So in in its proper context or whatever case may be. So it does apply to everything, but the normal person will look at that and be like, hey, I don't do martial arts or whatever, but it has a universe even in that context, it has a universal application. So let's get to the other piece out of this TM. Okay, so all right, so this is page 181 out of this TM Volume 2, Self to Others. Okay, in True Master, we discuss the concept of victory or the spirit of victory. Dictionary.com defines victory as the art of defeating an enemy or opponent in a battle, game, or other competition. As was discussed previously, that no matter what you are doing, self to others or others to self, you are always doing self to self, right? And this becomes more apparent, and we're gonna get into this in future videos in regards to like double talk. You see what I'm saying? Um, how if there's only one thing, you see what I'm saying? That's the basis of double talk. If it's just one, if double talk, if you're not familiar, if you haven't heard me say this on other videos or whatever case may be, it's the equivalent of a Freudian slip, except for you can read whole conversations like that. You see what I'm saying? Because the basis is it's only one thing. So and humans are 100% in trance 100% of the time. So a lot of times when people are discussing other things as far as they understand, they're actually giving you information about themselves. So moving right along. Um, let's see here. As we discussed previously, that no matter what you are doing, self to others or others to self, you are always doing self to self. All right. That's we get into the whole idea of you're the only one here because it should. So if it's only one thing, we'll get into that. Okay, when we speak of victory, it takes on different forms, from a defensive, offensive triumph over adversity as one obvious aspect of victory. However, who are we ever really fighting but ourselves? We discussed in the structure of 9 points, snapshotting the feeling of what it feels like to win. This would be the literal repetition of the spirit of victory, as in patterns being spirits. Yet this concept goes deeper than some competition against perceived others. There's only one thing. Victory on a deeper, more practical level, as discussed here, will pertain to what it feels like to do a task correctly, giving you best effort each time. Giving your best effort each time, with the goal being an innate, habitual, proper execution and proper response to a given energy at negotiation. So let's go back over that. Okay, so the goal not being whatever it is, winning, getting a gold medal, getting a girl, whatever you're trying to get. Um, uh, it's an innate, proper execution. Okay, okay, so let's break this in half. An innate, proper execution. I'm trying to be an artist, basically. The 4 phases of awareness. I'm trying to have unaware proper application. I'm trying to have a level of mastery over the principles to such a level where I can do this without thinking about it. You see what I'm saying? With the goal being an innate, habitual, proper execution and proper response to a given energy at negotiation. When you start getting into this, you're going to get into the idea of proper and improper responses to things. You see what I'm saying? That's within martial arts. Anybody who knows who practices martial arts, we know when we do drills and have certain things like that or whatever the case may be, we're dealing with stimulus and response and stuff like that. But in this, we're kind of broadening it out to various other levels of life and stuff like that. And as it pertains to the experiential, you get into our interactions with people and relationships with people, favorable and unfavorable situations, or whatever case may be. The proper response would lead to the favorable outcome. The improper response would lead to the unfavorable situation and everything like that. So we start to get into things of that nature. So let's see. Uh, the fourth phase of described awareness, the artist. To metaphorically have the innate intelligence of the artist is to have correct touch. Okay, so basically the fourth phase of awareness, the artist, that's you've attained correct touch. You innately just know what it feels like to do something, do it correctly. All right. As described in the Tai Chi Classics, or to embody victory or be possessed with the spirit of victory, as described in True Master. So basically, you talking about being possessed with the spirit of victory, knowing what it feels like to do it right. I know that sounds real like theatrical and however it sounds, being possessed by the spirit of victory, but it's basically knowing what it feels like to do it correctly. Okay, this doesn't mean that every time you are faced with the external competition, this doesn't mean that every time you are faced with external competition, you will win. However, as it becomes a habit to operate from the position of your best effort, it bleeds into any and everything that you do. With that being stated, you will not win every time, but success will become uh, habitual. So right there, that's the spirit of victory slash correct touch. That's a teaching out of that TM volume 2, you know what I mean? That self to others. Um so that's the flavor that you getting when you read that. Um that's a martial art being filtered through the experiential, the idea of symbols, patterns, and principles and stuff like that, and my own unique experience from what I gathered from the art itself and filtering the art through the experiential. But hope y'all like that. Appreciate all the support, man. Peace and love, man. You know what I'm saying? Till next time.